The Hanako Incident. Hanako was a female Asian elephant who became one of Japan's most famous zoo animals. For decades, she was the zoo's star attraction, often surrounded by children and families. But in her early years, Hanako's interactions with humans were not always safe. In 1956, only 2 years after her arrival, a man, reportedly intoxicated, entered her enclosure after closing hours. There are various details, but accounts suggest he may have taunted or tried to approach the elephant. Hanako lashed out, attacking and killing him. A few years later, in 1960, another tragic incident occurred. This time, one of Hanako's keepers was accidentally trampled to death while working inside the enclosure. That case was widely seen not as malice but as a terrible accident in close contact with a huge animal. These 2 deaths gave Hanako a reputation as a dangerous elephant, and for the rest of her life, she was kept under stricter management. Unlike some other elephants, she was not allowed to give rides or do close contact shows. The Lion Incident. On the afternoon of February 15, 2024, tragedy struck at Sri Venkateswara Zoological Park in India. A 38-year-old man identified as Prahlad Gujar came to the zoo alone. Later in the day, he approached the lion's enclosure. Authorities say Prahlad ignored warnings from zoo staff. To get closer, he climbed onto a water tank beside the enclosure. Additionally, he climbed over a 6-foot fence that separates visitors from the restricted lion area. He then jumped into the lion's enclosure. Once inside, the male lion jumped and grabbed him by the neck. In a desperate attempt to escape, Prahlad tried climbing a tree, but the lion was able to reach him. He was dragged some distance before staff could lock the lion into its feeding cage to stop the attack. Tragically, he died on the spot. The bite to his neck was fatal. The Rhino Attack. Early on the morning of September 12, 2023, a routine task at Hellbrunn Zoo in Salzburg turned into a tragedy. A 33-year-old female zookeeper, an experienced keeper and specialized in working with rhinos, was inside the rhino enclosure to apply insect repellent to one of the animals. At around 7 a.m., during this regular maintenance task, for reasons that remain unclear, the rhino suddenly attacked. The woman suffered severe chest trauma. Efforts to rescue her were immediate. Another keeper, her husband, a 34-year-old man, rushed in to try to chase the rhino away and assist her. In doing so, he was also attacked and seriously injured. Despite rapid medical attention, the female zookeeper died at the scene. Authorities later noted that there had been no prior incidents in that rhino enclosure, which had been in use for nearly 30 years. The free ticket. It was a cold day in January 2017 at the Yunggor Zoo in Ningbo, China. A middle-aged man, later identified as Zhang, visited the zoo with his family. Instead of purchasing tickets, he chose to climb over the fence to sneak inside. What Zhang did not realize was that this path didn't really lead to where he wanted to be. As he dropped down inside, he found himself in the tiger enclosure. Several Bengal tigers immediately noticed him. Panicked, Zhang tried to run away, but the animals quickly gave chase. Eyewitnesses later described scenes of horror as one of the tigers lunged, pulling him to the ground and mauling him. Visitors screamed, and zoo staff rushed to save him. Park employees used firecrackers, water hoses, and eventually live ammunition to scare the tigers away. But by then, Zhang had suffered catastrophic injuries. Despite being rushed to a hospital, he died later the same day. His wife and children, who had entered the zoo through the front gate, reportedly witnessed the whole thing from a distance. The incident spread quickly across China, with many people criticizing Zhang's decision to climb into the zoo, while others questioned whether the zoo's enclosures were properly secured. Binky. In the early 1990s, a polar bear named Binky became an unlikely celebrity at the Alaska Zoo in Anchorage. Binky had been orphaned as a cub in 1964 near Barrow, Alaska, and was raised at the zoo. By the 1990s, he was fully grown, weighing close to half a ton, and lived in a concrete enclosure surrounded by protective barriers. Yet, despite the warnings, visitors occasionally ignored the rules. On July 29, 1994, an 18-year-old Australian tourist named Catherine Warburton decided to climb over 2 safety rails to get a better photo. She approached right up to the bars of Binky's cage. In an instant, the bear attacked, pulling her through the bars by the leg. The attack was brutal, but not fatal. Warburton suffered a broken leg and other injuries. Onlookers screamed, while zoo staff rushed to intervene. After the attack, Binky refused to release the woman's shoe, which came off in the struggle. For days, he carried it around his enclosure, holding it like a trophy. The image of the massive polar bear holding a bright sneaker in his jaws was splashed across the newspapers worldwide. Just weeks later, in September 1994, a second visitor, a local teenager, also entered Binky's enclosure, this time by scaling a fence at night during a private zoo event. He too was mauled, though again he survived with serious injuries. The Safari Incident. On the morning of September 10, 2025, in Bangkok, Jian Rangkarasamy, a 58-year-old veteran zookeeper, was driving through the park's open-range safari zone in his Jeep. an area where lions roam relatively freely and visitors are strictly prohibited from leaving their vehicles. At some point, Gian stepped out of his vehicle, even though safety rules require staff and visitors to remain inside vehicles at all times in that zone. The reasons why he left the Jeep are not fully confirmed. Some reports say he may have been retrieving something, perhaps leaning down, possibly searching for an item, or clearing space for a better view. Witnesses later said he stood with his back turned to the lions. A lion, apparently taking advantage of his vulnerability, crept up from behind and launched the first attack, biting him in the back of the neck. Almost immediately, other lions joined the mauling. Some accounts say 6 or 7 big cats were involved. The attack reportedly lasted several minutes, roughly 15 in some descriptions, before help could arrive. During that time, horrified tourists inside their cars tried honking their horns or shouting to distract the animals. Jan was rushed to a nearby hospital, but by then his injuries were catastrophic. He did not survive. An autopsy later revealed injuries including severe damage to his neck, a torn artery or vein in his thigh, and a trachea injury that prevented him from calling out.